How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the Small Talk Show. Today, we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills' newest running back, the rookie Ray Davis. He was a round four pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, taken at pick 128 by the Buffalo Bills. Davis is 5'8", 220. He's a little bit on the older side. He's already 24, will be turning 25 in November. This is because he played 5 seasons in college, the last three of which were in the SEC with Vanderbilt and then finally with the Kentucky Wildcats. Davis had over 1,000 rushing yards in each of his last 2 years, catching around 30 passes a season as well in those 2 years. In his final season at Kentucky, he had 20 touchdowns, 13 rushing and 7 receiving. He averaged 5.7 yards per carry in that final year, all while playing behind a pretty terrible O-line at Kentucky, but he still set career high in yards after contact per attempt in this final year. Ray Davis really was the Kentucky offense. He accounted for 33% of their scrimmage yards and 49% of their offensive touchdowns. These results earned him pretty high marks from PFF. He ranked at the 86th percentile for rushing grade, and at the 78th percentile for rushing grade against loaded boxes or 8 defenders in the box. Now, to zoom out from the stats and go to a general prospect view, the strength of Ray Davis's game is his running between the tackles. He bounces off contact very well, and he's extremely powerful. He's not the most elusive or explosive. Davis won't be a big play machine. Davis is not slow, but he doesn't have elite speed. He had a 4.52 40 at the combine, which, to be fair, at his size is very impressive. Davis, as shown by the stats, can catch the ball, but when it comes to passing downs, an interesting point, something to expand on later, is that he does need some work in pass protection. So this paints a picture of Davis being that kind of bruiser who has capabilities in the receiving game, but mainly will come into a team to be a power back. And that's a good transition on to the next segment, and that's the team fit with the Buffalo Bills. Of course, James Cook is the incumbent running back. He will be the lead back, and I project him to get the most touches of any running back for the Buffalo Bills in 2024, injury permitting. But James Cook is 190 pounds. He's not the biggest guy, and he isn't really built to carry a large workload. And he's not very effective in short yardage. In fact, the Buffalo Bills didn't really trust him in that role and regularly yanked him off the field in short yardage or red zone situations. Very frustrating for fantasy managers of James Cook last year. The Bills actually had Latavius Murray, NFL journeyman, 33. He played at 33 in the last season. He had the same number of touches as James Cook inside the 10 and more attempts from inside the 5 with a much higher conversion rate. Murray had 4 rushing touchdowns to James Cook's solitary 2, although Cook did, of course, add 4 receiving touchdowns as well. But Buffalo Bills really did look for that bigger power back to complement James Cook, not just with Latavius Murray, but they started the season with Damien Harris, who did have a pretty terrible injury that honestly may have contributed to his retirement this offseason. The aforementioned Murray, and of course, who can forget old Lenny Fournette going to the Buffalo Bills? I definitely thought he'd have a bigger role than he eventually did. Barely played really after a few weeks in the practice squad. But that's all to say that the Buffalo Bills really looked for that bigger power back to complement James Cook. And with all that in mind, it really makes sense why they targeted a player like Ray Davis in the 4th round to add to their running back room. Now, let's go over some quotes from the coaches. Bills OC Joe Brady, when asked on whether he needs to dial back James Cook's workload, he said, a lot of that is just kind of seeing how his body holds up throughout the season. He's physically in better shape than he was last year. On rookie Ray Davis, Brady said he brings a little different elements both in the pass game and in the run game that we felt like were great additions. So now those quotes really don't give away too much, but I feel like we can make the case that Ray Davis comes in to take a few touches off James Cook, especially on early downs and short yardage, and definitely when it comes into the goal line and the red zone. And just the final point I want to make when it comes to evaluating James Cook versus Ray Davis's workloads is who's going to be the back in play on passing downs. Of course, James Cook is an explosive back, a great pass catcher. But when it comes to pass protection, James Cook's really struggled at this. Not surprising at his size, but on the field too, the tape is not pretty when it comes to pass protection reps for James Cook. This is really why Latavius Murray stayed on the field a little more than you would have expected, even when his actual rushing production started to come down. He started to wear down at his age. But that's where Ray Davis, while not being the best pass protector, if he can improve, he may get that nod over James Cook with his size, weighing almost 30 pounds more than James Cook and definitely a lot more compact. If Davis does improve that pass protection, he could siphon away a few more snaps that would have otherwise been James Cook's based on his ability to protect Josh Allen. But there's a difference between being a breather back that gets 4 to 5 touches. We don't really care about that kind of profile for fantasy football. And being someone who can contribute as a standalone player and not just a handcuff. And why could this be? I think the biggest piece of the puzzle is the offensive coordinator, Joe Brady. So now let's break down the scheme and the scheme change that the Bills underwent in the 2023 season. They started the year with Ken Dorsey at offensive coordinator. He was there for the first 10 games until an embarrassing loss to the Denver Broncos. Under Ken Dorsey, those 10 games, they ran 592 plays, 43% of which were running plays. Joe Brady had 9 games in 2023, including the playoff games. They ran 629 offensive plays. Honestly, an interesting point about the pace of play, that they got more plays per game there. But they also ran 52.6% running plays under Joe Brady in that time. So as you can see, the volume of rush attempts went up quite significantly under the new offensive coordinator. And Joe Brady is, of course, going to be the OC for the Buffalo Bills in 2024. Let's zoom in on James Cook and his workload and performance with the coaching change. Cook went from averaging 12 attempts and 14 and a half touches per game under Ken Dorsey to 17 attempts and 20 touches per game under Joe Brady. So pretty significant tick up in workload. James Cook was the RB19 overall in points per game in half PPR last year, but he averaged 10.6 points per game under Ken Dorsey, and that went up to 15 under Joe Brady. So we can see that this is a very promising situation for the running backs. Not something we usually associate with the Buffalo Bills. Of course, having Josh Allen being very pass happy in recent years, but the change mid-season really could point to an uptick in the run game as their main method of attack in 2024. Another big point for an increase in the running game is that the Bills lost Stefon Diggs this offseason. Diggs, of course, has been a massive part of the air attack since he arrived at Buffalo, linking up with Josh Allen. They also did lose Gabe Davis, though not the most consistent target earner as fantasy football managers have unfortunately learned. He was an important part to the NFL attack, taking the top off defenses and running those deep routes. So two big losses for the Bills. They did add Curtis Samuel and Marquez Valdez-Scantling in free agency, and of course drafted Keon Coleman, the top of the second in the NFL draft. But there are no established receivers in that entire pass core that will really demand targets in such a way that necessitates a heavier passing attack than what Joe Brady has already shown in his time at Buffalo. So I present all this information to make the case that there could be enough attempts for Ray Davis to raise him from that kind of breather back for just a few touches a game to someone who actually could be a touchdown dependent flex, an RB3, a low end starter with 10 touches. And I mean, yes, you're really hoping for that touchdown for him to get home, but someone who could have standalone value even when James Cook is healthy. Of course, with huge upside if James Cook does get injured. Now, we talked about it very briefly, and rightfully, you're probably questioning why I haven't brought up Josh Allen. And Josh Allen is not just a huge part of the run game. Arguably, he's the lead back for the Buffalo Bills. There was an increase in his attempts as well under Joe Brady. So not all of those touches were just siphoned off to the running backs. But Josh Allen, he had 15 rushing touchdowns last year, tied for second in the NFL with Jalen Hurts, only behind Raheem Mostert. Josh Allen had more rushing touchdowns than CMC last year. And while, yes, that's a huge case for him remaining the main weapon on the ground in the red zone. And yes, I expect that to be the case. But touchdowns are not very sticky from year to year. And I think it's a pretty fair call to make, a fair bet to say that Josh Allen's rushing touchdowns come down from 2023. Now, the Bills every offseason do make a big deal about wanting to rein in Josh Allen's work on the ground. But realistically, with his success and Josh Allen being the player that he is, you're not going to be able to stop him scrambling when, he's the best player on the field. He's going to keep the ball in his hands and get those extra yards, get the ball over the line for a touchdown. So Josh Allen will stay the primary weapon on the ground in the red zone for the Buffalo Bills. But I think we can make the case that more touches go to the running back room from Allen to a power back running between the tackles, close to the goal line, such as Ray Davis. So that's why I think we could make the case for Ray Davis to have 8 to 10 touches, to be that touchdown depending flex, but most importantly, to make the point that he can be a player with standalone value, even if James Cook is healthy, a handcuff plus plus.
I've been working my entire life to finally show this to you. Okay, ready?
And this is something that will be very valuable to a lot of managers in your league. Now to go to acquisition of Ray Davis. Currently on KTC, he's 37th overall. I don't think this is very accurate. I've seen him go as early as the mid-third in rookie drafts, most often the late third. I've taken him at the 310 myself. Now, with the draft capital for all these players, I think it makes sense and is right that Trey Benson, Marshawn Lloyd, and Blake Corum all go ahead of Ray Davis. Jalen Wright goes ahead of him as well. A lot of people like his speed with the Miami Dolphins fit. People are enamored by that run game. But I don't think there are merits to all these players having a round or round and a half higher of an ADP than Ray Davis, when in essence, they're all either handcuffs or handcuff pluses based on all of their situations. So if I'm going into a rookie draft and looking to draft a running back, I'd rather move back that round to the late third and take Ray Davis than any of those other running backs mentioned. I'd also love to trade into the late third to acquire Ray Davis for all of the reasons we've mentioned. And that's where I think his value really could take off when we get to redraft season. If he does get those 8 to 10 touches on the ground, let's say he gets a week 2 rushing touchdown, he's going to be a waiver wire darling. All of your favorite redraft gurus are going to say, acquire Ray Davis now. He can be a starter in a pinch. He'll be a premium handcuff when he's attached to Josh Allen if James Cook does go down. And that redraft buzz is just a different kind of hype to give to a player. Yeah, it's the same season, the same game, but Dynasty regular season just doesn't have the same feel as redraft. And if Ray Davis does become a hot name in redraft circles, that's going to give a lot of shine to a player that you have to spend that you don't have to spend expensive capital to acquire. I'm not saying his value is going to jump from a late third to anything more than an early third, because he's still a handcuff, a low end starter at best when James Cook is healthy. But he could be the kind of piece that a lot of managers think they want to acquire as part of a smart move. So I'd love to sneak him into a tier up scheme. Let's say I add Ray Davis to T. Higgins and try and flip that up to Drake London. It's going to be a lot more possible. Ray Davis is going to get a lot more liquid when that redraft buzz come in, as I predict based on this analysis of his profile. So I think Ray Davis makes a lot of sense as an investment in the late third round. Huge cases for upside, not just as the handcuff to James Cook, but potentially a low-end starting role right from the get-go based on what we've analyzed with Ray Davis's profile and with the team fit with the Buffalo Bills, who have been looking for this power back for quite a while. So I think that's all I got for you today. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and follow. You can follow my work as well on Twitter at SmallTalkFF. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.